What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. So, as we're going through this hiatus for basketball, man, I'm just thinking of different things to just talk about as far as topics, right? So, I'm thinking about this GOAT conversation, right? But I'm not thinking about LeBron versus Mike. I'm thinking about various other players, right? And, I've just been sitting here thinking to myself, why is it that why is it that he necessarily gets to skip everybody else? Like, I remember some years ago, the conversation was, and this is years ago, LeBron's at least a top 20, 25 all-time player, right? This is when, I'd say when he joined the Heat and won his first title, right? I remember the conversation being, he's a top 25, 20, 25 player then, right? That was the conversation. But somehow, miraculously, he's gotten to the point where he's been able to leapfrog everybody. Now, mind you, they were saying this about LeBron after his first title with Miami when they beat the Thunder. I remember them saying he's at least top 20. But yet Kevin Durant has won two NBA championships, right, with the Golden State Warriors in dominating fashion against the consensus best player of generation. And yet when you talk about historical rankings, they really still don't be giving him, they still don't give Durant his proper respect, right? But I've been thinking, man, why is it exactly that LeBron is considered superior to Shaq? I mean, he has more points than Shaq. He has more assists. That's the expected of a perimeter player. He has a higher career scoring average, but Shaq, you know, unfortunately, played well past his prime, and also played in the era late 2000s, 2010, 2011, which was starting to become an era that was not favorable for centers with his play style. So it really hurt his numbers um, overall. But when you look at Shaq's dominance, right, and you look at how he was at his truly at his peak, how literally teams feared going against this guy in a way that I can't say the same for LeBron. Now, don't get me wrong. Players respect LeBron, okay, but the fear factor they had for like a Shaq, nah, it's not even the same category. Okay, they actually invented Hacker Shaq. The Hacker whatever. Now it's Hacker Jordan for DeAndre Jordan or whatever. But the Hacker was invented because of Shaq, because the one Achilles heel he had was his terrible free throw shooting. Okay, so there's that. His free throw shooting was a hole. To his credit, though, Shaq did seem to knock them down when it mattered more, like in the fourth quarter or in crunch time, as opposed to LeBron, who statistically is a superior free throw shooter, but it's the opposite with him. He tends to shrink or tends to miss them when it counts more. Now, MVPs, LeBron is overwhelmingly ahead of Shaq. 4 MVPs. Could have made the case he would have got his fifth this year. Depends on what happens this year. Shaq only had one, but everybody pretty much admits that Shaq should have had more than one league MVP. You can make a case that Shaq could have won it in '99, along with the other people that year. They went to Carmelo, but Shaq could have won it that year. You can make the case that he could have won it in 2001, 2002, 2003, 2004, 5. He could have won it in various seasons. He could have had 5 MVPs, but there's always been this bias against big men, oftentimes when it comes to that award, at least lately. But Shaq has 4 NBA championships. LeBron has 3. Shaq has a winning record in the NBA Finals. I believe he's 4-2 in the NBA Finals. The two losses being the sweep against the Houston Rockets in '95 and the upset loss by the Detroit Pistons in 2004. So there's that. LeBron has been swept in the finals twice, and he's lost in 5 twice. So LeBron has had some very ignominious moments in the finals himself. Just going through some numbers here. Shaq led the NBA in field goal percentage a record 11 times, all right, including 5 straight years in a row, 97, 98 to 2001, 2002, which is probably his absolute peak years. So he led the NBA in field goal percentage a record 11 times. Led the NBA in effective field goal percentage 6 times. Led the NBA in scoring twice, 95 and in 2000. Right now, he's 4th all time in PER, the stat that Max Kellerman raves about every fucking day when he's talking about Giannis. Number 1 is Michael Jordan. Number 2 is LeBron. Number 3 is Anthony Davis. Number 4 is Shaq. But unlike Davis and LeBron, Shaq played some years where he was really down, as far as his production. Because at one point in time, around the time of the 2004 NBA Finals, Shaq had the highest PER in NBA history. At one point in time, Shaq had the highest scoring average in NBA Finals history. That dropped after the 2004 Miami Heat series as far as the scoring numbers are concerned. Shaq led the NBA going to, as far as advanced metrics is concerned, Shaq led the NBA in PER 5 years in a row. The years I mentioned before, 98 to 2002. During that 5-year stretch, just want to check some out real quick. During that 5-year stretch, Shaq averaged, as far as PER, a 30 overall PER rating. That's phenomenal. Phenomenal. He accumulated in that 4-year stretch 66 total win shares and had a win share per 48. If you don't, it might be like, oh, what do these numbers mean? Win shares per 48 of 0.256. That's Jordan on steroids territory. All right. He led the league in win shares twice. Was in double digit with win shares 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different times. Led the NBA in win shares per 48 twice. And he was an all-star 15 out of his 19 years. It would have been 16 if the 99 season didn't cut the all-star game, you know what I'm saying, because of the 50-game schedule. But Shaq should be in that conversation. But you know what, aside from numbers, I mean, Shaq was just unbelievable, man. The most dominant player ever outside of Will Chamberlain. Um, when you consider that he's not a perimeter guy and that he has to get the basketball, you know what I'm saying? Like, centers don't have the ball in their hands at all times. Perimeter guys generally have the ball in their hands. So for Shaq to be able to do what he did in his best years, he was putting up, he had a 10-year stretch where Shaq averaged at least 25 and 11. Okay? 25 and 11. When he was younger in the spring year, like 7'1", 300, the early Orlando Shaq, that's when he was a dominant rebounder, dominant shot blocker. I still remember this game when they played the Chicago Bulls. I think it was January the 16th, 1993. I think that was the date. And Jordan had 64 points that game, right? But what gets lost in that performance was Shaq. And Shaq had, I want to say, 28 points, 24 rebounds, and like an insane number of block shots. And it was a battle. And at the time, I remember thinking to myself, man, this guy's going to fucking own the league. This guy's going to fucking own the league. You know, he just had that one Achilles heel, and that was he just wasn't a good foul shooter. If he was just an average foul shooter, like 75%, he would have led the NBA in scoring virtually every year. And he would have had 5,000 more points than what he finished with if he was just an average foul shooter. That was the one thing that teams tried to do to stop Superman. And he was truly fucking Superman. Like, when he got it going, there was no defense in the world that was going to stop him. Okay, you couldn't do anything. That's why he gets so offended when people call Dwight Howard Superman. Like, seriously, you know. But when he got it going, right? You know, he wasn't never Hakeem Olajuwon, but when he got it going, he had two dependable moves. All right, he had the drop step, and he had the black tornado, his spin move. Okay, before he started breaking down around 2003, 4ish. Before around that time, he was unstoppable, man. Like, I mean, I never seen anybody with that much power in my lifetime in the NBA. You know, people talk about Zion, and Zion is awesome, but Shaq at his best, man, was a whole nother beast, man. I mean, Shaq could get you easy 27 points, 12 rebounds, 3 blocks. You know what I'm saying? Shaq, by his Laker years, developed into a very, very good passer from out of the post. Shaq should have won way more MVPs than he did, though. Way more. I mean, the fact he only got one MVP is a disgrace. A disgrace. You know. And the thing about it, too, when Shaq was playing, there were still other marquee centers in the league at the time. You know, you still had Patrick Ewing, you still had David Robinson, you still had Hakeem Olajuwon. You know, you had Dikembe Mutombo. You know, you still had some big men out there, Alonzo Mourning. You still had some big men out there that that could contend. You know, I don't know, man. I think Shaq needs to be brought up a little bit more. A little bit more. I'm not saying he's the GOAT, but I think he needs to be brought up a little bit more when it comes to the all-time greats. I noticed like he's slipping out of that conversation. He's slipping out of it. And my thing is, when I look at LeBron, he is awesome, you know, but could you make a case that Shaq really should be in the same category, or at least in the same level as LeBron? Shaq played 19 years. This is LeBron's 17th season. All right, LeBron's been to 9 finals. Shaq went to 6. But Shaq was victorious in 4 of the finals. LeBron lost 6 out of 9. I don't know, man. It's difficult. I can see people going with LeBron because LeBron has dominated the decade of the 2000 teens. You know, he seemed to have been that one singular player, but at the same time, I don't see it like that. I see it sort of like he was the constant, but you also had guys like Kevin Durant, As a matter of fact, when you think about it, like I've said this before, LeBron has not won the league MVP award in 7 years. So you've had other guys who have shined in this era. You've had, uh, Kevin Durant. You've had uh, Stephen Curry. You've had James Harden, Giannis, Westbrook. You've had all these different guys that have won that award since LeBron has won it. In Shaq days, however, you can make the same argument, if not more. I mean, why he didn't win it more? Well, first of all, he played smack dab in the Michael Jordan era. His teammate was Kobe Bryant. That took away from the argument. Some people said, well, if he didn't have Kobe, he wouldn't have won these titles. You have Tracy McGrady, you had Allen Iverson, you had Vince Carter, you had Tim Duncan, you had Kevin Garnett, you know, uh, Dirk Nowitzki, Steve Nash, you had Karl Malone. Charles Barkley still was a force in Shaq's career, the first half, first couple of years at least. So he still had all of these great players in Shaq's era, more so than LeBron's era. So his competition, the edge would go to Shaq. I don't know, man. I've been thinking about this. I really am starting to come to the conclusion, just me, people can disagree with me on this. LeBron's in that category, to me, he's more in that Wilt Shaq category. By that I mean, you can make an argument that they are the greatest players of all time, but you can also make an argument that they didn't fulfill their expectations in a lot of ways. Wilt, in that he didn't win enough. Shaq, in that he didn't win enough. And LeBron, in that he didn't win enough, in particular in the NBA Finals. And you can make the competition argument against LeBron. You know what I'm saying? Like as far as the Eastern Conference is concerned. So that's my argument right in this video, man. Like I think LeBron belongs more in that Shaq, Wilt Chamberlain argument. You can make the argument that they're the GOATs. As far as their dominance at their positions. But then you can also say they didn't quite get it done enough in certain areas in their respective eras to be the GOAT. Now, Shaq, like I said, did have a winning record in the NBA Finals. But some people think that Shaq should have won more. Because you got to remember, Shaq got swept in the playoffs a lot. Okay, like, I think the first year the Magic went to playoffs was 94, I believe. No, I think they did go to playoffs his first year. They went to playoffs his first year in 93. I think they got swept by I can't remember. I can't remember whether they went the first year or the second year, but I know the first year they went to playoffs, they got swept by the Pacers. Okay. Then they got swept by the Rockets in the finals, okay, which was unexpected. Then they got swept by the Chicago Bulls the very next year in the revenge series for Jordan and the Bulls losing to them the year prior. Then in 97, I think they lost in 5 to the Jazz. Then in 98 in the conference finals, I think it was conference finals, they lost to the Jazz in a sweep. In 99, they got swept out the playoffs by the Spurs. It was a lot of losses. And that's why a lot of people think that Shaq, as dominant as he was, you kind of hold him back a little bit because he lost a lot, especially earlier on in his career. But anyway, I want to make this point as detailed as possible. I think Shaq, Wilt, and LeBron are somewhat in a similar categories. You look at you bring up stats and numbers and all that. I mean, they're great. Both of them high PRs and all the you can make the great Nick Wright arguments for guys like this. But at the end of the day, the eye test, embarrassing playoff losses, sweeps, these things do matter. So that's why, in my opinion, guys like LeBron, Shaq, Wilt are in one category, and that's why guys like Kobe, Mike, and Jerry West, even though I know he lost a lot in the finals, they're in another category. Okay? All right? So tell me what you guys think.